No one could handle the billionaire's daughter. Every tutor, bodyguard, and nanny quit within a week. But one man, a quiet janitor with nothing to prove, did the impossible. And by the end, the entire family learned what real strength looks like. Before we begin, tell me in the comments which country you're watching from. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more unbelievable stories like this one. The billionaire's estate was the kind of place that made you feel small. Marble floors stretched endlessly, chandeliers sparkled like diamonds, and security cameras followed every step you took. The owner, Richard Dalton, was one of the richest men in the country, a ruthless business tycoon who built an empire out of steel and technology. But for all his power, there was one thing he couldn't control: his daughter, Elise. Elise was 19, brilliant and utterly unmanageable. She had been expelled from 3 boarding schools, crashed 2 sports cars, and once fired a housekeeper for not ironing her designer sheets the right way. Every employee in the mansion feared her. Her temper was legendary, her arrogance unmatched. One afternoon, the household staff gathered nervously in the kitchen. Another nanny had just quit after Elise threw a tablet at her head. The head butler sighed and muttered that they might as well give up trying to discipline her. But that's when the door opened quietly, and in walked Marcus, a middle-aged janitor with a calm face and tired eyes. Marcus had just been transferred from a downtown office building that Dalton's company owned. No one knew much about him. He didn't speak unless spoken to, didn't gossip or didn't complain. He was a widower who lived simply, taking the night shift most days, always with his sleeves rolled up and a quiet dignity in the way he worked. When the billionaire saw Marcus's file, he barely looked twice. "Just a janitor," he said dismissively. But when Elise refused to let anyone clean her personal wing, Marcus volunteered. The staff warned him it was a suicide mission. But Marcus only smiled faintly and said that every mess could be cleaned if you started with patience. The first day, Elise ignored him. She spent hours on her phone, blasting music loud enough to rattle the windows. Marcus swept the floors, dusted the furniture, and repaired a broken lamp without a word. When she realized he wasn't reacting to her antics, she grew annoyed. She threw papers on the floor, spilled a smoothie on the carpet, and laughed. Marcus silently fetched a mop and kept working. On the second day, she played louder music. Marcus brought earplugs. On the third, she tried to insult him, mocking his clothes and accent. He simply nodded, smiled, and continued polishing the mirror until her own reflection looked back sharper than ever. For the first time, she saw herself through someone else's effort, and that unsettled her. Days passed, and something began to change. The girl who screamed at everyone started watching him work. She noticed how he wiped every surface twice, how he moved slowly but purposefully, never leaving a streak behind. One morning, she asked him why he didn't quit like the others. Marcus simply shrugged and said that his mother taught him to finish every job he started, especially the hard ones. That stuck with her. It turned out Elise's anger came from loneliness. Her father was always away on business. Her mother had passed away years ago. Money bought her everything except attention. She acted out because no one stayed long enough to care. Marcus did, quietly, consistently, without expecting anything in return. He began fixing small things she'd broken: a cracked frame of her mother's picture, a music box that hadn't worked since she was 12. Slowly, she softened. She started asking him questions. He never gave advice, but his stories about growing up poor, losing his wife, and raising his son alone carried more wisdom than any lecture she'd ever heard. Word spread through the mansion that Elise was changing. She stopped yelling at staff. She said thank you to the gardener. She even helped Marcus carry cleaning supplies one morning. The butler nearly dropped his tray when he saw it. One evening, her father returned early from a business trip. He was stunned to find his daughter reading quietly in the garden. When he asked who was responsible, Elise simply said, "The janitor." Richard Dalton scoffed until Marcus entered the room. The billionaire didn't recognize him at first, but when Marcus looked up, Richard froze. Years ago, Marcus had been one of his employees, a warehouse foreman who saved Dalton's company during a fire, risking his own life to pull others out. Instead of being promoted, Marcus had been quietly demoted after injuries kept him from physical labor. Dalton had forgotten his name. Marcus hadn't forgotten the man who never thanked him. The silence between them was heavy, but Marcus didn't mention the past. He simply said his work was done. Elise had learned more than he could teach. Then he gathered his tools and prepared to leave. But Elise stopped him. For the first time, she hugged someone without fear of rejection. She thanked him for treating her like a person, not a problem. Marcus told her that respect is something you earn by giving it first, and that even a broken heart can teach kindness. After he left, Richard sat alone for a long time. For the first time in years, he felt ashamed, not of his daughter, but of himself. He found Marcus's old file, saw the note about the warehouse fire, and realized the kind of man he'd overlooked. The next morning, he called Marcus back. He offered him a new position, not as a janitor, but as Director of Staff Relations, overseeing employee welfare across all company properties. Marcus accepted, but only on one condition, that Elise spend a month volunteering at the company's charity foundation. Richard agreed. That month changed everything. Elise worked at shelters, soup kitchens, and hospitals. She met people who had nothing but gratitude, and she saw how one man's quiet strength could ripple across lives. By the end, she wasn't just the billionaire's daughter anymore. She was someone who finally understood the value of people, not possessions. Years later, when reporters asked Richard Dalton about the turnaround in his company's culture, he didn't credit consultants or management systems. He credited a janitor named Marcus, who had reminded them all that character, not wealth, defines a person. And as for Elise, she became one of the most compassionate philanthropists in the country. Her foundation built homes for families in need, and every plaque bore the same inscription: "For Marcus, the man who cleaned more than floors, he cleaned hearts." That's the story of how one quiet janitor did what no amount of money, discipline, or power could ever do. He changed a person by example. Tell me in the comments which country you're watching this from. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more incredible real-life stories of justice, redemption, and unexpected heroes.